svim jezicima svijeta ima tu zastavu. Nema. A već smo live, dobro. Završit ću vam onda.
Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to the last session of the conference, which is with title After the Pandemic, Sustainability of Cultural Production and Exchange, as you can read. And it is the panel, as it was announced, that will examine the issue of sustainability of cultural production and cultural exchange and the necessity of changing past production practices in the field. So just to say briefly that these days for me were exceptional concerning the conference. I really enjoyed them. It was very informative from one side, but also very inspirational from another side, especially coming from this cultural and art field. I could have seen how different opinions can collide from environmental, let's say, practices and those in the cultural field. And how actually we can maybe, I can see that we can intensify our struggles through this communing or through this connecting our knowledges, experiences, stories, or different specificities in other contexts that we could have heard about, but also some restrictions that we are finding in our struggles and in our environment in which we live and we work. My name is Biljana Tanurovska, and I come from Skopje, in now North Macedonia. It's part of ex-Yugoslavia, for some of our guests it doesn't know. However, I'm a part of independent cultural scene. I work for many years there. And I can say that I'm a producer, curator, and someone that works maybe in this kind of intersection between art, culture, politics, and policies. And being in this environment where I work, which is very unpredictable, and it's very turbulent also and unstable circumstances, I could have faced myself that I was trying to develop different ideas and to sustain them in the same time. As the last one that I would say, it's this project space that we had. It is named Kino Kultura, project space for contemporary performing arts and culture. And it was just closed after 5 years of work. So what is there to sustain? It was a question, or it is a question in that sense, for example, about this practice. So for me, it was not this material space or this infrastructure that we are going to try or we are trying to sustain, but mostly to sustain the praxis that arised within this space, and also to sustain the idea that came up with this space. So what we are trying now is actually to transform this project space into a platform and then probably the institution. And not the institution as something that will allow us to be more stable and then to sustain this, but because I see and we see institutions maybe in the future of the future, something that it's transformable and it has its potentiality to kind of to change itself from inside, let's say. So for me, what I would like to say is sustainability maybe can be related to something which is transforming or reforming itself into a different kinds of matters. It's not related only to material means or infrastructure or finances or anything else in that matter or direction. So I can say that also maybe sustainability can be related to this, to liminality as something which is related with the past, but also with the future who is not there yet somehow, or having in mind that future is not there yet as one which is unpredictable, unforeseen, suspended, unimaginable, as we heard that Bifo said 2 days ago. So we're going to talk today about artistic and cultural practices and sustainability of them, but mostly kind of yesterday, actually, Boris said that the future is in the past. So we probably are not going to use this neoliberal concept of foreseen future, but we will speculate about the future with the experiences as a cultural workers and artists you have in the field. But also what is valuable as a perspective that we would like to bring, and we talked before, it's about restrictions and limitations that we are facing about, especially in some of our contexts in which we work. And maybe some of our contexts are even deprived contexts, totally undeveloped, and even very much intensified. This deprivation was intensified with the pandemics and with the environmental crisis. And another aspect that we would like to try to discuss today, it's also this international and local aspects and how this changed within self in a collaborative manner with the pandemics and with these restrictions. Because when we talk about these restrictions or limitations, it's about the proximity, the bodies in relation to other bodies restrictions, not only these travel restrictions and everything else. So today with us here, we have actually 4 participants, and one of them is going to appear now here behind us, and you can wave, we can wave. And I have to, so I have to just introduce. Okay, so now we have Darius Ghavami, who is a sustainability coordinator and collaborates with the Center of Competencies for Sustainability of the University of Lausanne and Theatre Vidi-Lozana. So he works with these 2 institutions, and as I didn't know about him, I was searching a bit about in the institution. Aha. And I found that Vidi-Lozana, it's actually the theater, and I've seen one excerpt there of announcing this new performance where the trio is working with the excerpts of voguing on the scene and putting it on the scene. But another thing I saw, it's in your program, is this sustainability theater that actually is done between Katie Mitchell and Jerome Bell. And then I come to introduction of the next of our participants today. Because also Lazaro Gabino Rodriguez, he's an artist coming from Mexico, Durango. And actually, I know him through the letter or answer to Jerome Bell letter. Maybe he can say something about that, because I have some questions, and it's related with these actually restrictions that we have also in the deprived circumstances or very limited circumstances and contexts we work with. But however, he was studying in Europe, in Amsterdam, and now his work consists of exploration around the fiction and notions of true and false, and emerging from personal memories and their relation to fiction. So you can really relate to future as fiction, probably, in our talk. So Lazaro's projects are in theater, but also in other media. So he also founded in 2003, also when I founded in Macedonia in 2003, another organization with my colleagues, Lokomotiva, and yours is called Collective, Lagartijas Tiradas al Sol, which you work with, but we can hear about your practices more. So here with me, it's also Haris Pašović, who is a very well-known theater director from ex-Yugoslavia, but now living and working in Sarajevo, at this moment being working in Belgrade. And we know him through numerous productions that he did in past years. He has been participating here in BITEF with four times. Also, he won one prize here at BITEF years ago. However, his production Wedekind's Spring Awakening, it's famous in that matter and is considered as a landmark in the theater of ex-Yugoslavia, I would say. And now he works as a professor of Performing Arts Academy and also on different positions, but also I would like to mention director as the Sarajevo Fest. And then, last but not least, Janez Janša, who is here next to me, and he is an artist and interdisciplinary performances. He produced different and many through years, and he's known also about strong critical and political dimension in his works. He was for many, many years also a director of Maska, who is an NGO, and it's in Slovenia, in Ljubljana. It was an NGO for publishing, production, and education, very famous in its publishing magazine for performing arts. Now he is working as a professor at HCT at Berlin, and also part of curatorial team of Tanzquartier in Vienna. And he's known from his work that he started in 2007 by renaming of himself as well as two other artists, colleagues in Janez Janša. And now he owns this trademark, Janez Janša. So that's it shortly. And yes, I proposed these directions that we will talk. And I would like to ask Darius to start, since he is limited also with time, and how we conceptualize this, let's say, talk. It's that we will talk, not we, but I already took my 10 minutes, but each of us will have 10 minutes, and then we can raise some issues and questions that we could share among us, but also we will be happy to share it with you. So thank you for joining us, Darius, even
thank you.
Like
thank you
this.
for the invitation.
And please, you can start.
Okay, hello everyone. Do you hear me? It's all good, right? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. There you go. And I am going to put it in full screen. Okay, all good. It's fine. You can hear me. You can see the screen. Okay, thank you so much for the invitation. So before starting, I just wanted to say that I'm replacing my colleague Karolin Barno, who was supposed to be here today and talk with you. She's the executive producer at Théâtre de Vidi-Lozana, and she couldn't make it. Unfortunately, she's in a train trip through Europe, and there's very bad connection in trains. And I'm in Switzerland, and I can talk with you about what's going on in the Théâtre de Vidi right now. What I've called a road to a sustainable theater, which, you know, ... There's actually 4 dots, not 3, because it's not it's a proposition that we're trying, that we're experimenting. It's not a stop model or a unique solution. So my name is Darius Gavami. I am, as you said, sustainable collaborator at the University of Lausanne at the Center of Competencies for Sustainability, and working as well at Vidi's Theater. And I think, just to start, that it's something that was very beneficial through the pandemic and through our topics about sustainability, is to work between theater and sciences and the University of Lausanne, in order basically to make dialogues between art and sciences, and to try to find new ways of approaching and dealing with sustainability. So I think that was a very fertile collaboration that we've been doing for quite a few years now. I'm going to present you two projects that we have been doing now. The first one is, as you said, the international co-production called Sustainable Theater ? And the second one is a sort of a collective thinking, collective design thinking called Imaginaries of Possible Future. Both projects are done with the University of Lausanne, and it's opening up new vision and new perspective of how to deal with sustainability. So let's start with the first one called Sustainable Theater ? So as you said, it is a project. This project is a sustainable, playful, and full-scale experiment of sustainability in an international context, initiated by the British director Katie Mitchell and the French choreographer Jérôme Bel, and at the Vidi-Lozana. And it aims at questioning, theoretical practices and within our modern challenges through its narrative and its production process, stressing therefore the role and the responsibility of performing arts within our modern challenges. So what basically we have done is to create 3 scripts, and the 3 scripts are the only thing that are basically traveling in this international production. The first one is the narrative, is the script of the script of the play. The second one is the production script, meaning that each theater co-producers of the projects, those theaters are based internationally, they're going to use this script, this kind of based rules, to recreate the show, Katie's and Jérôme's shows, according to their own specific resources, and using their specific teams, finding new actors, new tech equipment, and so on. So we really try to both make links between global dynamics with local resources. And the third script that is going to be sent to the partners is the workshop we have created, and this is what I'm going to explain you a bit more deeply. What have we done? Well, with the University of Lausanne, we thought that this full-scale experiment of sustainability is an opportunity actually for the institution to dig into sustainability and to address and to question practice and behaviors within the institution regarding social and environmental criteria. So we come up with a tool, with a method that we are proposing each theater partners of the project to address before recreating Katie's and Jérôme shows. So these methods that are workshops, they're here to kind of prepare the environment within the institution to come up with ideas before creating Katie's and Jérôme's shows. So this workshop basically are based from the donor theory that I think you have. We presented to you for the past 2 days, and the main question was to raise how do theater can live within the planetary boundary? How can we do theater within the planetary boundaries, within this material limitation constraints that our ecological crisis are throwing us? So the question is, how can theater institution can get into the donuts and therefore address both social and environmental dimensions within a local and a global scale. So we came up therefore with this guide called Getting into the Donut, the Sustainable Theater guided workshop, and we got influenced by the Creating City portrait that maybe done by Kate Raworth, so the woman who created the donut theory, and she created this method for the cities in order to help cities digging into the donuts and address social and environmental criteria. And so we adapt this method to the institution, to the theater and cultural institution. So this workshop is divided into 3 steps, spread over 2 to 3 months for 10 to 12 meetings. And it's a really participatory approach that allows really the inclusion of all the institution collaborators, all the members of the theater ecosystems, meaning the teams, the management team, the departmental team, but as well the audience members and maybe as well some artistic collaborators. And the aim is really to, assess a self-investigation of, the practices and behaviors of the institution in terms of sustainability, and how can we, improve those practices and behavior to prepare ourselves for the creation of Jérôme and Katy's and Jérôme's show. So it's really a collective dynamic, gather everyone around the table and say, okay, now what is sustainability for us? What kind of definition of sustainable theater can we give according to our local context? And more concretely, the idea is to imagine some concrete sustainable action that each department, though the departments are the one coming up with the ideas, that they want to experiment for the recreation of Katy's and Jérôme's show. And maybe those actions will, stay on the longer run. And as well, trying to create a collective vision for the future of the institution. So it's really important to see the artistic project as an opportunity, actually, for the teams to face a common objective, a common goals. And as you know, in theater, what brings so many different people from different fields and work together is the artistic project. And now we have both an artistic project and a sustainable challenges. And I think from my point of view, sustainability is really there to, gather people around the table if it's done in a participatory approach. So here is the process. So as you can see, there's 3 steps with different objectives for each steps and an agenda. So each theater partners are going to take this process and adapt it to its local context, maybe do only one part of one step or all of it. It depends on the states of awareness and on the context of each theater. So the idea is basically to fill in some posters. I am the coordinator of this the workshop here in Lausanne. We tried it, we experimented it, and we're going to send it to the partners of the project. And what we have done with the team is basically to fill in posters and to, think collectively, debates, note things on post-its, argue, raise fears, concerns, dilemmas. Really was a collective thinking that was very important here. As you can see here, the idea was to elaborate the portrait of the institution in terms of social criteria. So what does the institution do in terms of mobility, of networking, of access to food, access to salaries, in terms of governance, of diversity, equity, and so on. And those are the social criteria from the donor theory of Kat Rayworth. So we face firstly those social dimensions on a local and global scale, and then we do the same exercise for environmental criteria locally. Firstly, how can the theater be an habitat and give ecosystemic services like another ecosystem such as forest or whatsoever. So how does the theater do in terms of air quality, of waste management and so on? And then in a global aspect, in terms of not transgressing the planetary boundaries, so we're really into this donut approach. So what does the theater do in terms of IT consumption, of mobility, of production, of trips and touring, of scenography and so on. So the idea is really to, okay, what do we do right now and what do we want to do for the future for each of those criteria to improve our activity and our impacts, trying to make links between social and environmental criteria. So here you have a few examples of what we've done and how do the process was. And then the second step of the workshop was to work with the departmental team, so each team of the theater, and to analyze with them, the impact of the activities within those, environmental and social criteria, and to come up with some ideas. And it was very important that the ideas are not fixed. So each idea needs to be thought and debate and coming up with some dilemmas of each of those ideas. And those ideas, as I told you, will be experienced for Cathy's and Jérôme's shows. And then the second part of this workshop with the departmental team, so each department, it was a prospective scenarios exercises. So we thought with the team what will be the activity of the department in 2030 from an expected future regarding the dynamic of society right now, and then in a desirable future. So the ideal future of the department in 2013, raising up values, principles that need to be defended in order to realize those desirable future. So this has been done since spring 2021. The final step is basically to implement those strategies and those visions and to share all the results with all the partners. And the idea is really to create a collective, as I told you, dynamic and an international dynamic to really nourish the process with the experience from all the theater partners, not only from, Vidi proposed here, we propose an experiment, but not a model, and everyone is going to, adapt it and make it its own. And this is very important. What I must say is that it was very interesting to see that people needed to, after what we've been through with the pandemic, with the fact that the sector of culture, arts fields have been completely ignored by our authorities. People within the theater, the people that are worked in the theater, they needed to just gather all together and defend their sector. And that was really what I thought very inspiring somehow, that sustainability was an opportunity for us to defend the essence of their work and of their field. The second project I wanted to talk about is, as I told you, this collective thinking called Imaginaire des futurs possibles, so imaginaries of possible and desirable futures. And this is a cycle of meetings and collective experimentation about sustainability. We've been doing it as well with the University of Lausanne. We did it 2 years now, and it's going to be the third year we're doing it. And the idea here is really to question sustainability in a really global aspects and perspective, including therefore artists, scientists, and as well audience member. How does this cycle of meetings were held? Basically in 3 parts. The first one is a seminar organized by this philosopher that we invite and that is taking care of the cycle. The seminar gathers 7 young artists and 7 young scientists from the University of Lausanne together and thinking with this philosopher sustainable themes and topics and challenges during 4 meetings. And the next morning of each of these meetings, the idea is to do a discussion with the audience about the topics. 1 hour is basically a conference hour that the philosopher present the topic to the audience, maybe with the help of some seminarists. And then the second hour is to do an exercise with the audience. The audience is split between different groups moderated by the seminarist, and think together about the topics presented by the philosopher and do some exercises. The project is concluded with a theater event called the Théâtre des Futurs Possibles, and it's basically 1 to 2 days of opening day to the public. It's basically the seminars show to the public what they have done during the seminars, So the scientists and the artists propose some, collaborating projects. Most of the time is artistic projects that are doing some dialogues between arts and science. And we launched this 2 years, 1 year and a half ago. And it's in the middle of the cycle, the pandemic came, and we tried to adapt it. It was very important for us to keep the cycle of meetings, and in order to, keep a link with the audience and with the spectators and with the artists and the scientists. So we did meetings through Zooms, and we, thanks to those kind of new, platform, could do a lot of participatory workshops through Zooms, split, the audience into different rooms and do the works together. So it was very important and for everyone to, just sit at the table and just discuss about those topics. This year we are going to do a third season of this cycle with these. It's with the artist. Now it's not a philosopher anymore. It's an artist called Fausta Linelkula. Sorry. He's a dancer, a choreographer from Republic Democratic of Congo. Well, which is great now is that we really want to question this sustainability from another perspective than the European one, and include, this new, this new perspective that an artist can give now to scientists, to the audience, and to the scientists. And we're going to do it as well with the University of Kisangani in Congo in collaboration with them. So it's going to be very, very interesting, and we really look forward to this new version of the cycle. To conclude my presentation, well, I wanted to share you some concern and dilemma for sustainable theater, or for trying to create a sustainable theater between both a production process and as well collective thinking process with the audience. The idea for us is really to understand how can we better integrate artists into these institutional reflections. Talking about, the guided workshop I presented you in the beginning of my presentation. Those ideas that we came up with the departments are going to put some limits, some constraint to artists as well. And it was very important for us to understand how can we integrate those artists, because they have a role to play, and we need to think together about how to adapt our situation to the environmental constraint that we are thrown into. And basically the conclusion is that the idea is not only to, I don't think that is the arts to be reducing nowadays. I think we need art, we need theaters, we need culture. Why? Because the sustainable problem, the climate crisis, the ecological crisis we're thrown into is a cultural crisis, a crisis of our relation to us, more than human, that we have with nature. And we need, therefore, to find a new relation to it, to give a new meanings to this relation to nature, to have new representation of this relation, and therefore to have new imaginaries, new narratives, new fictions that are going to lead us to those new sustainable and desirable futures. And those fictions...
Darius, I have to interrupt you a bit because it took a long time, but maybe we can come back at 5 o'clock because we need to continue actually with the rest of the presentations. As I said, each of you have this 10 minutes, and this is like to rise the questions and opinions on the directions that I have said. So thank you so much so far. I would like to,
finish something which is very important, just to make sure. What I wanted to say is that which is important is that it's important for us to carry on doing some productions and to opening up, using theater as a place of opening up, to the world and discovering new points of view and thinking process and perspectives. So it's not the idea of restricting touring activity, but to adapt production process to the new constraint, how to optimize the productions nowadays. Because as I told you, we really believe to the in the social and the symbolic power of arts. And this needs to adapt our production models, but not necessarily to reduce the theater activity. So to make links between global dynamics and relocalization of our activities. I just wanted to finish there.
Thank you so much. And maybe we can come back here, so on the stage, and continue from here, because somehow it's like I want this proximity, like, you know. And from this context of Lausanne, maybe we can go with you, Lazaro, because it was how Dario said it also, it was about how constraints can be used in optimizing this touring. Is that possible as in this situation? And how from your perspective, you can relate to the questions I gave before?
Thank you, Biljana, and thank you, everybody, for being here. I just want not to say I get very impressed by what just happened. I don't know if Darius, you realize what happened, but you take 40 minutes out of a table, and we are 3 people here, and I don't know, there's something about this idea that it's always 20? Yeah? Okay. Well, anyway, I have the feeling that there's something that it's this idea that I have an idea and I put it over everything, and I have my response to Jerome Bell that I'm not want to talk about this. It's also about this, that who allows himself or herself to fit a standard and to set what is to be said and how things can be organized. So I feel, I don't have the word in English, but it's dislocated because the distance between the rhetorics and the actions. Simple action, like the respect for the table. Anyway, I'm gonna talk about sustainability in Mexico City, in the artistic practice in Mexico City. During the pandemic was, of course, a very strong time for culture in many parts of the world, but also in Mexico. And Mexico, it's a place that has institutions, has many institutions that carry on culture, that supports culture, and so on. But during the pandemic, most of those institutions receive or cuts or complete disappearance. They put on hold many funds, and then it looks difficult how these funds will get back. So I think we are experimenting a sense of somehow loss of some past. There was this phrase during the pandemic. I don't know if you heard it here, but in Mexico was quite common. Like, we don't want to get back to normality because normality was the problem, and was sort of a radical statement. But at the same time, there was many things in normality that were so good, let's say, or were better than we will face later after this pandemic. Yeah, I don't know. I have the feeling that the theater in Mexico died a lot of people during the pandemic, like in many other places. But what really strokes me during this period was this idea of that the deaths became just numbers. That we were just like, okay, today 500 people, tomorrow, and then you just have the feeling that for us 500 people was bad, but not the worst. 300 is good, and when we start saying like we're in 200, was just really like saying like yes, and it's like 200 people that are dying. And I have this feeling that in movies we have a certain approach to the death, because you can see a character like just killing people around, and then anonymous people died. But in the theater, it's very difficult that this thing happen. You always somehow are related with the death of someone in the theater, because it's difficult to have people of props just dying. So I was really missing theater for this idea of how theater can rebuild our notion of that one death is one life, and each death somehow counts. I'm a bit disorganized, sorry. Well, during the pandemic, the positive effects that I feel was how the disciplinary spectrum was, let's say, broke. I was very skeptical about the translation to the Zoom theater and so on, but I feel that in a conservative theatrical environment like Mexico, something happened when people try to, or when we freeze ourselves, and then people try to start experimenting with some different mediums. I have the feeling that the pause at least confront us to what is our discipline, what the hell we are doing, and why it's important or not, and why it's not one of the primary necessities in the government standards and so on. So, yeah, I don't know. That's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing up this also idea about life and death, and about our kind of reading of the matter of life, you know, and how one life matters really. And also when you were saying this, I can replicate in our kind of surrounding, and I think like, what do we do about it, and how we reflect on that, yes. And Haris, where we can continue, I mean, what is what we bring out of what we learned with these pandemics? What we can do within theater field, and what is the sustainability of theater for you?
I was thinking, you know, during your introduction, that the older you get, the less of future you have, and the more often you are invited to speak about the future. So, and I usually try to avoid that, because why should I speak about the future of some young people today when I have a problem even to understand their way of life and their models? And I certainly don't want to sound like some patriarch talking about you should do this and you shouldn't do this. What I would try then to answer about the future is what would be perhaps good to avoid. Because if there is any value of experience of the old age, and I don't think there is much, so if there is any value, it's certain experience, and possibly you can transfer this experience and say that this was not worthy to invest your energy in, because it didn't really bring the desired result. Talking about sustainability, I don't find it very, I don't know. Theater is a big survivor. It has been always sustainable. I mean, I don't know that theater had any problem with surviving. It was always attacked. We are well trained in history and today to work on a minimum of resources, to produce magic despite all the odds, to communicate with the audience. Audience loves to come to theater despite all the troubles. So I don't think that actually it is the issue. No. Except that it's issue if Creative Europe puts it as an issue. And then it becomes issue because it becomes a good opportunity to get some money. And then you, if you are from Western Europe, you say, we from Switzerland, Great Britain, and France will tell you what should you do, and goodbye, we don't have time to hear anything about this from you. So that is the old model of sustainability. But the new model is exactly this, that people don't want to hear this attitude anymore. And people say, in a less polite words or in a more polite words, wait a minute. We are not here to be lectured about anything. We are here possibly to exchange the experiences, to talk one to another, and not to get the presentation and goodbye. Concerning pandemics, of course, it's a part of our life, but I don't think that it is also a big issue, because it has been many times during in history different kind of pandemics, epidemics. You know, plague was often devastating the cities in Europe. And you will find very little of this in the works of the ancient Greek writers. There are only few references to the plagues that played a significant part in the time of Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, and other authors. You will not find any reference to the plague in Shakespeare work, although several times, you know, there were epidemics in London in his time. So it was just there, you know, and I think it's a crisis that eventually will fade out, and I don't think that it will be any big consequence about it. Certainly, it did speed up maybe this hybrid way of communication, which was about to happen anyway, because you know the digital life has been more and more present, and of course that some kind of, like this one, you know, some kind of combinations will happen. So I believe that some other issues, like political issues, like economic issues, and like artistic answers to the new realities, not in technical terms, whether we are digital or whether we got vaccine or not, but rather about what kind of needs we develop in the modern age. That's for me, you know, like what I've been thinking about.
Okay, thank you, Haris. I will continue now with Janez. What is to avoid, and how we can avoid, if there is a chance to avoid something from the past, or do we want this actually that happened to use it as a process to what we can learn how to transform in the future?
Okay. First of all, when it comes to sustainability, yeah, I'm not sure if we heard, or I didn't hear a definition. Like, what do we mean when we say sustainability in the context that, for example, we heard the presentation at the beginning? And I would put it this way, yeah? In good old times, whenever there were some kind of moral questions, people would take a gun, yeah? We know this famous, you know, when I hear word culture, I take a gun, yeah? I think today, when you hear, for example, sustainability, of course you don't take a gun, but you take a calculator or a spreadsheet, yeah? And I think the first question I would ask myself, what is political economy of sustainability, and what kind of power relations and profits will be mapped when Creative Europe, or I don't know which kind of decision-making institution that distributes public funds but also private will actually step in the game and put sustainability as their interest. Yeah, so I think this would be my my first thing. Never forget, so not what to avoid, but never forget political economy. As soon as there is some kind of enthusiasm and affect towards that, look at what kind of power relations will be established. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to give a couple of examples, just maybe to also stimulate the debate. First of all, with some concrete examples coming from art field about first imagining the future. Yeah. And first I will give one example that I was involved, and then two others that I wasn't. So in 2006, I was still editing a journal, Masca, and the number 100 was published. And we invited artists that that we wrote about to imagine their project they would realize when the number 200 of Masca was supposed to come out. And in that year, that was with the rhythm that was scheduled, that would be the year 2023. So we asked more than 180 artists. A general answer was, I'm really sorry, I can't imagine even what is going to happen with me in 6 months. How can I think about something in 17 years? However, we received 48 beautiful or less beautiful ideas about the what artists would do in 2023, international and also artists from Slovenia, where Masca is published. And now the moment is arriving. First of all, everything accelerated. So number 200 of Masca was published last year. I am not the editor anymore. There is a new generation, new people. First thing they decided, let's slow down. Instead of accelerating, let's make free number 200. Yeah. In the moment when you actually imagine the future, I would say, and I also admit that maybe this is coming from somebody who is in that position to say something, but I would say we have to do our future because I don't agree with the fact that there is no future and that it's impossible to imagine the future, because you have an enormous enterprises and enormous involvement in imagining future. If you just start with the corporations, for example, you don't need to go to some institutes and so on. But the corporations can see much further because they invest so much money that they cannot take a risk. And their imagination is practical imagination, which means that they will do that. It's not that they are imagining and dreaming, but they will do that. So the thing that we are facing is we have to do our future. Yeah? And I would be here punkish, and I would just, instead of saying there is no future, there is future. And we will do it, and we will do it in a punkish way. Because that's, as Harry said, when you have nothing, the only thing that you have is your life, and you you do something with it. Now, two other examples. I are coming from, I would like to bring this question, followed by something I think we all noticed in different countries during pandemic. Yeah? So we were affected, like the field of live art, we were affected badly, but really badly. Yeah? And then there was also a lot of, so theaters were closed, depending from country to country, but there were a lot of restrictions. Yeah? And as soon as there were little openings, theater were becoming bigger popes of Pope themselves. They were more restricting. They were unmounting the chairs, like in theaters in Berlin. They unmounted chairs, made the distance. The protocols were very strict, and so on and so forth. And it was somehow never enough. Yeah? There is this famous statement by the priest in Croatia when the churches were allowed to receive visitors, and theaters were closed and cinemas. Yeah? Like, no, it was not the priest, but the Minister of Interior Affairs. It's the same, yeah. So he was asked that, and like, why church yes and theaters not? And his answer was that he trusts that the believers or church visitors will show respect to the circumstances in which we found ourselves, in this kind of language. But I will give you one example, which is coming from Kassel, Germany, and it's a research that was done by Forensic Architecture. It's a London-based institute or organization that does a lot of forensic investigation in different political and military issues. So they were investigating a murder of a young guy of immigrant background in a cafe in Kassel, and presented, based on enormous amount of documents and research, presented reenactment of a murder scene that took place in a cafe. And they showed that in that moment, the member of a secret police, German secret police, was present in a cafe, and there was no way for him not to see the act of murder. However, in his testimony, he was denying that. And what happened? They presented the evidence and reenactment in documenta, and for, let's say, art critics, the comment was, but this is an evidence, it is not art. Yeah? At the same time, they were invited to present this in one of the parliamentary boards in Bundestag, where the member of Christian Democrat Union of CDU commented, this is not art, this is an art, you know, we cannot take this seriously. So basically, my question is, can art be taken seriously? Like you clean everything, you make distances, you make protocols, you really take care that people feel safe, and they close you. Yeah, you show, look, the secret, the agent of a secret service was there. He had to see what happened. However, this is an art, so we cannot take it seriously. Okay, I give us a very fresh example from this year edition of Theater Formen Festival in Hanover. So what did they do? Yeah, they blocked a bridge of a very frequent road in the city of Hanover. And for the time of the festival, the traffic was not going on. They made a construction, something like this, or bigger, and there were events there, and people were gathering there, and presentations and meetings and so on. There was some kind of festival atmosphere. Yeah? Now, you have to always keep in mind that there is one taboo in Germany and one thing that is undiscussable: car industry. And you have to know that one of the seats, so the main seat of Volkswagen is in Wolfsburg, but in Hanover there is important production line. You know how badly Volkswagen was cheating some years ago, and nothing basically seriously happened. A lot of culture, by the way, in science is still sponsored by the money coming from that corporation. However, what did happen, and why I'm telling this story? Yeah? Of course, this bridge was blocked in coordination with the mayor of Hanover. It couldn't operate in a different way. And in September, you know now there are elections in Germany coming, yeah? And the mayor of Berlin is member of the Green Party. And they are playing green agenda and so on and so forth. So he somehow realized that actually this could be an example. Look, we can do it. We can block the traffic on the main road in the city and so on and so forth. Yeah? And in that sense, and I talked with Anne Mülter, the artistic director, she was aware of this kind of political, how do you call this? Yeah, or kind of abuse in a way, yeah? A spin, yeah? That basically continued, yeah, because in beginning of July, when the festival took place, the campaign for elections already started, and for example, you could see the posters of Liberal Party showing a slogan, something like, "I don't want to move like a snail on my roads." Yeah. You know that in Germany, why is it taboo? Yeah? Germany is one of the rare countries where you don't have speed limit on a highway. And it's an absolutely untouchable issue. Yeah? So I wanted to bring these two examples to actually see on one hand that as much as we do with art, it's somehow never enough, yeah? No matter how right we are. And on the second way, how easy art becomes co-opted and used and manipulated for the things. And I have to add here, because this is a public thing, this edition of Theater Formen was just an amazing. It's very rare that you see a curation of a festival that is ethically so consistent as that one was. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Janez. You opened different lines from the last one where I wanted to take. It's about the seriousness and who can take us seriously, but also it's about these ethical dimensions that you open up with the last thing. And the ethical dimension, it's much more, how would I would say, related to what we do while we create, while we are doing the process, rather than when we kind of imitate the product, what we have in the public, because then there is always this kind of a reflective machine that can always say something is good or bad, or can understand or not, or can be taken seriously or not. So how actually we can proceed further in order to voice ourselves more? not only as a content, what we produce as an artist, but how we produce and how we change the system in which we work in order to enable this, what we produce, to be imitated further on in the future. You asked me a couple of days or today, what will happen with Lokomotiva 30 years ago? And I said, in 30 years. And I said, I don't know. And it's not, and you said, it's not about you to say, it's about the public. So that means like, but I did a lot of things and my colleagues and everyone, and that is what sustains and stay. But what has happened is that we created different, let's say, ways how we work that change the values, that change the environment, and which remain. So in that sense, I believe what we learned out of the pandemics, it might not change the whole, what we are talking about, but probably will change in our kind of like environment context in which we work, in which we live, or maybe through our collaborators and etc. What do you think? What happened there?
Yeah, it just reminded me that during the pandemic, we were a group of people in Mexico that get together from the theater community and taking, like making sessions of reunion, let's say, and talking about precarization and the work and how to avoid to work in these conditions and so on. This kind of theoretical approach that it's on the air, let's say. And some months ago, we have a meeting with some people very young. They were just about to leave the school, and then the pandemic happens, and then they remain there. And they were telling us something really, really hardcore for me, that was that in the end, this discourse of the precarization, it allowed us, my generation, let's say in Mexico, let's say to stay in the position of the creation, because as far as they have no access to the money, but now they have the ethical obligation to pay everybody, because they feel also wrong to don't pay their colleagues and so on. So we were like setting them a standard that they cannot fulfill. And as far as they are not start working early, they will, let's say, remain in this zone that it's, horrible, whatever. So I was really thinking about how we think about our desires and our propositions for the future, and to who we are sharing these propositions, and how we can enable. Of course, for someone maybe at my age, it's an important idea, the idea of the precarization, but we need to allow different models to be working at the same time, even if they are contradictory. So that's something that really get me, like, we cannot think about one model, so we can need to embrace different models for different people in the same context, let's say. Somehow, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, thank you. And you said about the political economy of sustainability and how it's measured, and then you mentioned that it's maybe it's created through some measurements by Creative Europe or maybe funders, as I understand you well. And but why it actually we don't work on creating this political economy, and what is our perspective on a political economy of sustainability? Actually, that is maybe the question.
Well, I can only repeat myself that actually we are doing, like now, we are doing future. It is not someone else who is doing our future. It is just that we might be conditions. We might be conditioned by the way how someone else is doing the future. But it's not something that doesn't exist, because we live our present and we live our future. So when I talk when I mentioned the political economy of sustainability, it is more in terms that maybe Haris introduced that, how something becomes actually colonized, a concept becomes colonized and politicized in such a way that only certain type of economy can be developed. Otherwise, of course, when you are in a kind of crisis situation, you look for the way how you will sustain, how you will go through it. And I think, Haris, you can say a lot about this from your practice that you did, amazing practice, chapeau, again and again, during the war. And I think these are some kind of existential things, yeah? So if I would actually relate talking, or I would prefer talking about sustainability on a kind of existential level, not on a moral, and also not on a political and economical, although I am aware that sooner or later that enters in the game. But sustainability, if I take it seriously as a concept, is an existential concept, is a concept of survival, basically.
Can I say something? Can you hear me?
Janša is always political because he is Janša, and that's the name of the Prime Minister of Slovenia. So Janša happened to change his own name into the name of the Prime Minister. I really don't know my Prime Minister's name, so that wouldn't make sense in my case.
He's very sustainable.
yeah. Oh, Janša is there. Janša is there, has been there always. And now he's in the presidency of European Union, right? Okay. So, but talking about sustainability, it comes to mind one sentence of Susan Sontag. She wrote in '96 in her essay Lament on Bosnia, she wrote an important conclusion. She said, Europe will be multicultural or it will not be at all. And I think that our world will be sustainable if we get multicultural in a full-time multicultural, And I don't think that we should have a Mexican restaurant next to the Korean shop and Vietnamese noodle place, and the rest are white and European. I don't think that it is multiculturalism. I think multiculturalism is essential dialogue between people who share the same space, the same world, the same art, the same disciplines, the same idea, the same worldview. And talking about this, Lokomotiva will exist in the next 30 years. I think that Bitev is very instructive, in this question. Because Mira Trajlović, there is her name on there indicating that this is her square. When she established Bitev and started to present, that was the cornerstone of internationalization in Yugoslavia. Not only in theater, but in general. We truly became an international country in culture with Bitev. And Bitev has sustained all these years for 55 years now. And there were difficult times. And there were some great times. And I watched the other day some of the programs from 80s, reminding myself, because I followed Bitev either as the viewer or visitor or as a participant since 1980. And when you take these programs today, if we would present them today, they would be equally relevant for us as they were relevant in their time. And I think the biggest challenge for Ivan is that his programs become relevant in 20 years in the same way. And I hope they will be. I think he is on this track. And that is why the audience saved Bitev. It's not so much the politicians, it's not so much even people who worked in Bitev, but the audience saved Bitev through all these years. So in that sense, I agree with your position that the public will decide about the fate of some organization or some establishment. And back to this multiculturalism, I think that it's so clear now more than ever, you know, that the time for a white supremacy is up. And that will not happen anymore in the way it used to happen. We have to open one to another in an essential way. The time for a Western European supremacy is up. It's finished, you know. Because now you can say, oh, we are from Switzerland, we have this and that, and then somebody from Belgrade or from Athena or from Moldavia says, oh, okay, so what? So what?
No,
okay, you get money from Creative Europe, okay, we don't, okay, no problem. So I think, you know, that the understanding that globalization is a two-way street is not yet there. And Bill Joy, one of the inventors of a Java computer language, in 2001 made his seminal essay called Why Future Doesn't Need Us. And he said that we are now entering at that time, and actually many of the events confirmed his position, that we were entering the time of democratization of evil. And that somebody sitting in the mountain in Kazakhstan can influence the events in some European country or in the United States or wherever, or can produce the weapons for mass destruction. We are almost there. We witnessed the other, I mean, just a few years ago, that in Macedonian village, there was the main hub that influenced the elections in the United States. And it was, you know, a few teenagers sitting in the small village in Macedonian mountains.
It was the city, I think,
Veles.
in Veles,
Yeah.
city of Veles.
Yeah. So it wasn't village, but it was still Macedonian. Yeah. And that is the present, and that is the future. And I think it's neither bright nor gray. I think it's dynamic future in which new ideas will open up and appear. But what I feel, and somehow there are evidences already that the theater will survive this as well. Theater survived everything. Theater survived Inquisition. Theater survived pandemics, epidemics. Theater survived different type of politics. Theater survived Nazism. Theater survived communism. Theater always survived. Theater survived film. Theater survived television. Theater survived radio. Theater survived internet. So we always survived.
But what kind of a theater would survive? We want to survive and maintain that section.
Only the best theater will survive.
Okay. I've been said that Dario wants to enter with a comment, and so it's very difficult that we don't have a disconnection and stuff. So sorry, Dario.
No problem. I've been hearing the discussion. It's very, very interesting, and I'm very sorry that I've made a bad impression to you guys. It was not the purpose. I thought I needed to explain what we've been doing here in Switzerland, in Lausanne. And I just wanted to say you that I'm completely agree of everything you just said, all of you, literally all of you. And my contribution was just to show you that there is a part to be done for our kind of institutions. It's not the only solution, is not the good, essentially the good solution, but it's something that we could do at our level, and we try to address those issues and questions in a collectively aspect. And it's very important, I think, to get experience from others and to understand how sustainability is being done in other in other occasions, in other contexts. And really important, I mean, that's we keep an opening discussion. And what I wanted to say and to conclude is that, for instance, I wanted to show you basically the method we've been using at Théâtre de Vidi. And this method is not aims at coming up with ideas and solution, but to, as I told you, to give, just repeat what you just said, that the subject is colonized. And we've been using an exercise that helps people to, through themselves in the future, and because of their vision of the future, they can create the present. And everyone has a different vision, different point of view, and it's important to, have listening to all of them. And we have a lot of to understand and to learn from other perspective. That's just what I wanted to say.
The production of a theater, production of performing arts, live arts. But we learned that we can use something out of this time, and we can kind of transform maybe these issues that we learned. Maybe we should leave the space more about experimenting in our field, or trying to not to to oppose this kind of neoliberal logic of presenting only the products, which is not something new, but it's again, it happened that it's essential for us. So maybe we should demand and we should ask about experimenting, about thinking together, not only among us, but also what is happening here, to collide with other, let's say, groups of citizens which are dealing with the questions which are important for us in this crisis that we are facing. But it's not this only pandemic crisis that we are facing, but also this kind of global environmental crisis that we are talking about. So maybe this would be, and also I would like to ask the audience to start asking. Okay, here we are. And maybe briefly, or you would like to add something to this, say something, or I should go through the audience? Okay, Mariana, please.
Thank you, everybody, for the talks and your ideas and proposals. And I would like to comment on Mr. Pašović's idea or statement that theater has always survived and will always survive. Actually, if we think about a romantic idea of theater, yes, as an idea, it will always survive. It has survived, and so far. But if we look at it as a network of relations, of interconnection of different roles, of different people with different capacities, knowledge, roles, that at the very end make the theater, then we have to ask ourselves, can we speak really about a survival or a sustainability of theater in contemporary conditions if we pay attention to the material condition of the workers who make theater of different kind, from artists and directors and actors to technicians, cleaners, and so on. So if we look at these conditions, I think that we have to be very worried. Should we talk about sustainability of a theater if a theater is a place of oppression, of different kinds of oppression, political oppression of the authorities who finance the theater, or the oppression of let's say, a director, a male director that oppresses different workers in the system of theater and so on. So I think that there is this other aspect which is relevant in contemporary moment, also in the post-pandemic situation. Is it a moment to really stop the theater being such a place of oppression and then make a sustainability on this basis? We have also very many examples in the theater houses where the collective decides to boycott, in a way, the director who has had different oppressive behaviors and so on. So even today, going to the court and so on. So I think that the other aspect of the theater needs to be taken into account, and these workers' conditions, rights, positions, situations in which the equality is established needs to be reflected, and also some actions need to be taken.
And just maybe to add to this, it's about in which perspective we are talking about the theater, the public theater or the theater in these countries, which has this kind of position, a different position, materialist positions, and also the actors having a different positions, or the theater which is produced in a very precarious conditions as independent theater. This is what happened in Macedonia, for example, that while these pandemics were happening, the actors being part of the public theater were having this possibility to maintain their jobs and not even work, but it's not the same for the workers in the independent theater. And you mentioned the precarious positions, and this was very much emphasized in that matter. So, and
I think that also certain forms of theater have died in our region because many people had to leave. You know very, very well that we have a lot of artists from the field that left our countries, therefore making certain forms of theater die here because they were in different ways oppressed. So they had to change the space in which they
the brain
were.
drains
So
in
it's
the
another aspect of this non-surviving theater, non-sustainable, let's say, idea of a theater due to the oppression.
Mm-hmm. Do we comment and talk about this, or plus we? Yes.
I would like to bring the attention a bit to political sustainability. You know, we organized a contemporary dance and theater festival in Istanbul for 7 years. It has become a successful festival in many ways. We were partners in some European projects with some of you here. And in its last year, in 2014, it was selected for the European Union Culture Program Festival Support and things like that. But we stopped. In the aftermath of the Gezi uprising, we decided it's not relevant anymore to organize this festival. The stage is elsewhere. Our focus was more politicized. And you know, we are talking about various scenarios of ecological disaster during the last 2 days, but also there are scenarios of political disaster. And we experienced in Turkey that these scenarios are not that far away. So this was another reason we had to stop in a way. It was not as easy anymore. And in today's situation, all around the world, a lot of people are joining different kinds of riots against the privileged, against the people they see as the privileged. And this takes different unpredictable forms. Sometimes they support right-wing for this reason. Sometimes they support anti-vaccination movement. And the left is not always in a position to embrace these riots. And the artists and theater is seen by big sectors of the society still as part of belonging to the elite, to the privileged. Even if we don't see it like that, we see ourselves in a different way. But this is the perception. And as long as this perception is there, it will be difficult to go on doing art and theater. There will be problems of political sustainability in the art world. Maybe we could elaborate a little bit on that topic.
Thank you, Edin. Who would like to comment on Mariana's and Aydin's questions and comments? We can start. We can all do that.
Yeah, no, I just was thinking about this. Yeah, that it was related to what Janez was saying about the place of the theater in society, or the different places that it has. And I am always very struck the amount of times in Spanish that the word theater appears commenting a political issue. Let's say the prime minister make a theater in order to, it's a lot, and now that I'm very aware of that thing, it's really, and it's a situation that came from Plato and this desconfianza, this yeah, no, but this attitude towards art, the art as something fake and somehow dangerous, and now not even dangerous many times. But what I was also thinking is about how this pandemic now, let's say, rechange, and it's also related to what you were saying, like the idea of change that for many times, at least in some parts of the world, was linked to the idea of somehow of the left wing was more related to change, let's say, to change society. And now in the moment of the climate change, the word shifted. It's something that we need to stop somehow. The change is something that needs to be, we need to be scared about it. So then it's also how art appears in a context that even the left, it's let's say promoting to stop the change somehow.
Okay, I think this year I would not be so neutral as you were towards pandemic. I think this was a dark age for, let's say, our business, live art. I think this was dark age, which showed many symptoms of dark age. And starting from what you mentioned, you know, the difference between employed people and freelancers. It's like, it's a class division of those who have something on the first in the month on their account lending or not. And it's a class issue. And if we are talking with these big concepts, you know, solidarity and so on, that is the place. That's the first thing. If you don't have something to survive, this makes you in a completely different position. And I think we will need to analyze this question of inequalities that happened during the pandemic much closer. But starting from this, what you were mentioning, that people who were employed in public theaters, for example, they received payment no matter if theaters were open or closed, and those who are freelancers, they didn't. That means that some areas, and we go a little bit further from theater towards, let's say, contemporary dance, that doesn't have their own publicly founded and funded institutions, they were radically precarized. I don't know how to say it, but you know what I mean. So I think there is the modes of production of injustice needs to be analyzed much closer. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be accurate, actually, there were some in some countries, in some cities, there were also funds for the freelancers. So there was a public money distributed to the freelancers as well. Maybe not in this amount, as to the employed artists, but yes, that they were not left completely alone. Also, I didn't hear of any case in any country that freelancers organized a syndicate to fight their issue. It's a random complaint, expecting the state to decide and to think about them. Whether we live in a class society, we do live in a class society. We voted to live in a class society. We voted to live in economic inequality. That was the choice of the people, you know, because we used to live in a country that was more about economic equality, but then we wanted some other kind of system, and we chose to live in the class society. So that's what it is, you know. Talking about both actually discussions, which I find, I mean, extremely interesting and relevant, I must say that I'm very surprised that you stopped the festival in Istanbul. I happened to be during the Gezi uprising in Istanbul, and I think that the authoritarian type of rule that you got now in Turkey is really very, very harsh. We as the citizens, we can do different actions. But we as an artist, that's another question. And my answer, based on my experience and experience of other people, including those like Hemingway or George Orwell or Anna Akhmatova, who wrote the poetry during the siege of Leningrad, or Kiro Ballet that gave performances during the siege of Leningrad, or the artists in Warsaw Ghetto who continued to play and so on. And also the artists in Sarajevo during the siege, I would say that art is always the answer, that the artist should answer with the art. And I'm now directing Miss Julie by Strindberg in the theater here in Belgrade, Madlenjanu. And I find all these issues addressed in this play. Inequality, class issue, authoritarian system, even environmental issues like cruelty against the animals that is present in that play. The only issue that there is no mention in this play is COVID, like pandemics, but everything else is there. And I find, that working with these issues, producing the play about these issues, we become relevant and we become the voice. So I would strongly advise continuation of the Festival of Contemporary Arts, because contemporary dance in Turkey, like in the Balkans, is not very strong. And I think it's a pioneering work, and it's really, really such a big shame and pity that if you stop the festival. And there is another case in which we as the citizens and we as the artists can react in one act, but that is very extreme case, like the case of the artists, musicians from group Yorum, who were imprisoned in Turkey, and some of them were on a hunger strike for 200 days and died. So that is the position that when unifies the artistic and personal or citizens' position, like in your case. I mean, you were not fortunately in this kind of situation, but you decided artistic action that unified together with your persona and with you as a citizen. So my answer for this and for this is to make art.
Okay, I have to add something. Actually, I'm impersonalized, body of a person that was fighting against these precarious positions, and we were kind of trying to network ourselves, but it's impossible to make a union still due to normative issues or legal issues in our country. So it's not the case. Actually, we were very loud. We were very open about the conditions, and we didn't gain. Actually, even we have our friendly social democrats on the power. So I would say that this situation of pandemics really emphasized the precarity, the working conditions, and the situation, material conditions in which you were working. And what I started with, it was about kinokultura, that we'd lost it, the only space. We could have used it for contemporary dance and contemporary performing arts. But it's not due to something that we didn't do, because we were doing it and we continue doing it, as you said, Janša, for the future. But we were also part of self-exploiting, We were self-exploiting because we can't do everything in the same time without a support from the community, from the politicians or political will, or also the colleagues who would understand in the environment what are these precarious conditions. So we didn't choose to work in or to live in this class society. We choose to live in a different society, thus we create different conditions which oppose actually what has been created in the past. So for us and for example, the people in contemporary dance that I work with, it's also an issue that we are trying to reveal from the past. We open up the themes and the subjects we want to work on, like non-aligned movements we started, to open up the issues that make a difference, to come to something in the future from the past as the lessons that we learned that can be done, in this different matter. So if anyone, but also about this closing, and someone, I understand you completely about this possibility that you couldn't sustain the festival in such environment. And then these big issues as solidarity. And I think that now in this very much open world in which we live in and still we know each other, this is probably the time that we should support ourselves much more and be more visible, not only to writing letters and sending somewhere, but really go maybe with Janez and protesting in front of the court in 2 days that they will be taken a place of mask from Metelkova, you know. And these kind of things that probably we should go into the struggles together, because otherwise probably still we will be invisible. And this is like what I learned in these pandemics in some way. So this is to share. So anyone else, if wants to, we have 6 more minutes just to open.
Could I have a short comment?
Yes, sure.
I mean, stopping
And
the
maybe we can last comments and we can
stopping the festival is certainly not giving up. Resistance takes on other forms. I mean, in the also in the artistic world, we just felt organizing this festival in its form, in that form, was not relevant anymore in that political context. It was not sustainable, financially sustainable anyway. I mean, organizing a festival like that without any local public fund. It was more like a statement until we were out of breath. That was foreseeable that it would not be like a long-lasting adventure. But as you say, different kinds of resistance takes on other forms. I mean, some Kurdish friends just took arms and joined the guerrilla. Anything is possible, but political context really is an important factor, aspect, and will be even more important in the world of the future.
Thank you, Aydin. And I can ask you if you want to comment something more for the end, because we already heard all this, we have to keep doing, we make the art world. Oh, sorry, I didn't. Yes, sorry.
No, it's just, I mean, it could have been a whole new conversation, but just as a comment, because Janez, you were saying that you were asking artists to imagine the future, and they could not imagine that future, and I had the same experience with students in the UK. While the UK university is super neoliberal, like students pay an incredible amount of money, like £10,000 a year, and if you're not from the country, even the double. And we were discussing capitalism, and a book by Mark Fisher called Capitalist Realism, and he says that it's easier to imagine the end of the world rather than the end of capitalism. And the students could not imagine the end of capitalism. We were discussing like how do you imagine an anti-capitalist world, a world that doesn't work like that? And there was this problem, like they could not even think about it, basically. But yeah, we could start a whole conversation about like how to connect the end of capitalism with sustainable futures, and like how do you imagine the end of capitalism? But yeah.
So thank you for the. Do you want to say something? Yeah, please do. Please do.
Yeah, I think. But I would just say, you know, if we can value the work of people differently, like if we accept this, how can we value non-work of people, yeah, like either like staying at home differently, which happened during the pandemic. This would be answer to you, because it's true, for example, in Slovenia, freelance artists got support, minimum wage, while the people who are employed, they kept the wage as they have in public institutions, you know. And my simple question of a little mujo is, how can you value differently a non-work? That's you know, I don't understand. I'm too naive, too young, too stupid to understand this kind of political economy. Yeah? Because it's not economy only, it is a political economy.
Yeah, and how you can value non-work more than the work and labor of the rest in that moment, maybe. So they're opening up.
You know, you have historical opportunities where equality could be moved forward dramatically, yeah, and you lose them. This dark age was,
the dark age,
for example, also an opportunity. I don't want to become pathetic, but
okay, now we know the
not to talk about European Union that cannot create common health system. Come on, it's like instead of embracing, like, okay, what should we base EU now on? Let's base it on common health system. It's a kind of neutral thing. Like everybody is for good health for everyone. Why was this not happening? Instead, it happened closing the borders, control, and so on and so forth. How is it possible that an Italian citizen is suddenly dangerous for me? And the first borders that were closed were around Italy, and because of Bergamo and so on. How is that? Explain this to little Mujo. I don't understand
how we
it.
cannot get universal basic income for freelance workers in our countries, for everyone, but also, yeah, I mean, for everyone. Why not? How not? But this is an opening on a new chapter and kind of a proposition for the next thematics on the conference. I would like to ask you if you want to add something.
I'd like just to say that maybe capitalism will not end. Maybe it shouldn't end, but maybe transform in some more just forms or some more, with a more human face in it. But listening to Janša and Biljana, I'm sure that opposition to capitalism will not end either. So, you know.
No, never. Okay, thank you, Lazaro.
No, I'm fine.
You're fine. Thank you so much. Thank you also, Darius, who is gone already. Thank you also the audience. And it's a wrap, actually. Someone should say it, maybe us. Thank you very much, Dušana. Thank you very much, Zajedno. Thank you, Mariana. And you should say.
Thank you, Biljana, and all of you participants, and thank you, the audience, for staying with us for 2.5 days. This is the end of our conference. I think it was really great, also because of all your participation. I would like to say thank you in the name of the Zajedničko platform to our colleagues and partners, Bite Festival, to all of their creative team and technical team, and all the volunteers and supporters. Thank you, Dušana and Nadia, for being with us in the organizational aspects. And this is one of the, I would say, beautiful examples of the collaboration between different partners from different positions, from different situations, material situations, And I am sure and I hope that it has raised some important issues and questions for all of us that will be further thought and potentially that something new will come out of it. So have a nice evening and see you around at the performances.